I'm not the kind of guy who counts other people's money. I'm the kind of guy who counts patterns. So when Ethan, my coworker, pulled into the lot the Monday after our Christmas appreciation event in a brand new $150K company car, I didn't feel envy first. I felt the same thing I feel when I see a number that doesn't belong in a spreadsheet, like a decimal shifted, like someone forced a result. Because I knew our company, I knew our policies, and I knew that gift didn't fit inside any line item we had. Let me back up. I'm Mark, mid-30s, operations analyst at a mid-sized logistics tech company. Not glamorous work, but it matters. We keep contracts from bleeding out. We keep vendors paid. We keep the machine moving when executives are busy being visionary. I'm also the guy who gets pulled into meetings when something goes wrong and nobody wants to admit it happened, which is why HR knew my name, and why Ethan never liked me. Ethan was sales, loud, social, the type who could walk into a room of strangers and leave with their numbers. He was also the type who made jokes that were just a little too sharp when he thought nobody important was listening. We'd worked together for 2 years, long enough for me to know his habits. He showed up late, he left early, and somehow he always had a story about why he deserved more. But management loved him, because he brought in one huge client last year, Orchard Ridge Automotive, a regional chain that shipped parts and equipment across 3 states. The contract was big enough that Ethan's name got mentioned in quarterly calls, like it was a magic spell. So when December rolled around and leadership decided to do a surprise appreciation moment, nobody was shocked Ethan got something big. What shocked me was how big. The event itself looked harmless. Friday afternoon, holiday music. CEO did a quick speech about culture and gratitude. HR passed out envelopes. A couple people got gift cards. Someone got an extra PTO day. Then they rolled in the car. A black SUV with a red bow. The kind of thing you see in commercials where the family runs outside like their entire life just changed. People actually cheered. Ethan laughed, hands up like he was soaking in applause. He slapped the hood, did a slow walk around it, and said something like, "Guess I've been good this year." My manager clapped hardest. HR stood off to the side with that tight smile HR people wear when they're watching reactions more than celebrating. Then my name got called. I stepped forward, expecting an envelope. HR handed me a small box. Light, cheap weight, no heft to it. I opened it. A watch, not a decent one. Not even a we tried one. It looked like something you'd win at a raffle. $25, maybe. I didn't say anything. I didn't make a face. I just nodded and said, "Thanks." Because that's what you do when a room is watching you. But I noticed something in that moment. Something that didn't match the applause. The HR rep, Linda, didn't meet my eyes. She handed me the box like it burned. And when I turned it over, I saw a tiny sticker on the bottom. Not a store label. An internal inventory sticker. A code. A category. The kind of thing you put on office property. I filed that detail away. That night at home, my wife asked how the event went. I told her, "They gave Ethan a car." She blinked. "A car?" "Yeah," I said. "A full-on company car, like luxury." "What did you get?" I held up the watch. She didn't laugh, but I saw the flash in her eyes. The one that means she's angry on my behalf, but trying not to turn it into a thing. "That's insulting," she said quietly. "It's not about the watch," I said, and I meant it. Because the next thing that happened wasn't emotional. It was procedural. The following Tuesday, I got a calendar invite from finance. Vehicle allocation documentation cleanup. That was weird. I wasn't in procurement. I wasn't in fleet management. But sometimes finance pulled me in when they needed someone who understood operational controls. The meeting included Megan, controller, Raj, AP manager, Linda, HR. My manager, Derek, and me. Ethan wasn't invited. That told me everything. The call started normal. Megan said, "We just need to finalize documentation tied to the holiday vehicle allocation." Linda jumped in quickly. "It's just for compliance. Nothing major." Derek added too casually, Yeah, just paperwork. Don't overthink it. I didn't speak right away. I listened. Raj shared his screen. A purchase order, a lease agreement, a vendor invoice. And right there in the description, plain as day, was the same internal category code I'd seen on the watch sticker. Only this one wasn't for a watch. It was tagged under a budget line labeled Client Retention. Orchard Ridge. My eyes didn't widen. I didn't react. But inside, a switch flipped. Because I knew that budget line. That wasn't a gift line. That was a restricted account tied to a specific purpose. Legitimate retention costs for a client relationship. Approved spend, documented, tied to outcomes. And I knew who had access to submit against it. Sales, leadership, finance. And if someone pushed something through, HR could be used as a soft cover. Megan kept talking, voice flat. We need a justification memo for audit purposes. Something that explains why this qualifies. Linda smiled too fast again. It's just an appreciation initiative. I finally spoke, calm, quiet. Appreciation for who? I asked. There was a pause. Megan's eyes flicked to Derek. Derek stared at his screen like it was suddenly fascinating. Raj cleared his throat. Linda said, for a high-performing employee. I nodded slowly like I accepted that. Then I asked the question that made the room shift. Why is it coded to Orchard Ridge retention? Silence. Not awkward silence. Operational silence. The kind where people aren't searching for words. They're searching for alignment. Linda's smile disappeared. Her lips pressed together. Megan leaned back. She looked tired. Derek spoke first, but his tone had changed. It's complicated, he said. I kept my voice even. It's not complicated. It's either a legitimate retention expense or it isn't. Raj didn't look at me. He stared at the invoice. Linda said carefully, we were told it was approved. By who? I asked. Linda opened her mouth, closed it. Megan said, we're not here to debate approvals. We're here to document them. That's when I understood the real point of the meeting. They didn't invite me to help. They invited me to validate. To be the guy who knows controls and processes, so they could say later that operations reviewed it. I felt my stomach tighten, not with fear, with clarity, because if an audit ever hit that file, whoever's name ended up on the memo would be the one holding the bag. And I saw Derek's play forming. Make it sound routine. Make Mark sign off. Let HR hide behind culture. Let finance file it away, and if it ever comes back, everyone points at the guy who reviewed the documentation. Not me. I took a breath. I didn't accuse anyone. I didn't raise my voice. I just said, send me the approval trail. Derek's head snapped slightly. Mark, I cut him off gently, still polite. Email thread, budget approval, who requested it, who signed it. I'll write the memo after I see that. Linda looked like she'd swallowed something sharp. Megan didn't argue. She just said, okay, we'll gather it. And the meeting ended faster than it started. After the call, Derek messaged me privately. Derek, don't make this harder than it needs to be. I stared at that line for a long time, because I realized something uncomfortable. The watch wasn't the insult. The watch was the distraction. The real insult was that they assumed I'd be quiet, because I always had been. But I wasn't quiet anymore. Not when my name was about to be attached to something that didn't smell right. That night, after dinner, I opened my laptop and pulled our internal policy portal. I searched one phrase, client retention expenditures. And there it was, in black and white. Must be directly tied to client relationship. Must have documented business rationale. Must not be primarily personal benefit to an employee. Requires multi-level approval. I leaned back in my chair because I knew what came next. If the approvals were clean, I'd write the memo and move on. But if they weren't, then the $150K car wasn't a gift. It was evidence. And I had a strong feeling they'd already started rewriting the story. And then silence, the kind that means something's gone wrong. Because my inbox refreshed, and I saw an email subject line come in from Megan. FW Orchard Ridge, retention spend, urgent. My cursor hovered over it. I didn't click yet, not because I was afraid, because I knew once I opened it, I couldn't pretend I hadn't seen it. I clicked the email. It wasn't a clean approval trail. It was a forwarded chain with holes in it, like someone had ripped out the pages that mattered. At the top was Megan's note to Raj and Linda. We need written approval on this before year-end close. Audit risk. Under that was Raj replying, I only have Derek's request plus H processing, no exec sign-off attached. Then Linda, Derek said it was approved verbally. He asked HHR to handle the gift narrative. And then Derek himself. 2 lines that made my jaw tighten. Stop panicking. This is retention. Orchard Ridge is sensitive. Get it done. No mention of the CEO, no CFO, no sales VP, no written authorization. Just Derek pushing a 6-figure personal benefit through a restricted client bucket and calling it retention. I scrolled down further. There was a draft justification memo already started, saved as an attachment, written in Linda's voice, full of fluffy language about rewarding high performers who secure strategic accounts. It read like a cover story, not a rationale. And the kicker, they had my name on the last line. Reviewed by Operations, Mark R. Like it was a foregone conclusion. I sat there for a full minute, staring at that line, feeling something ugly rise in my chest. Not envy, not insecurity. Disrespect. They didn't just hand Ethan a car. They handed me the liability. I did what I always do when something feels wrong. I built a timeline. I opened my notes and started listing facts only. Date of event, car reveal. Finance meeting, invite, invoice coded to Orchard Ridge, retention. No written approval, HR asked to shape narrative draft memo, already created with my review line. Then I pulled the policy again and copied the relevant clauses into a separate doc, not to weaponize them, to anchor myself in reality. Because in corporate life, the fastest way to lose is to argue feelings against someone else's confidence. Facts don't care about confidence. I replied to Megan, not with emotion, not with accusation, just control language. Thanks. I'm not comfortable being listed as reviewer without a complete approval trail. Please forward written authorization. Who approved, when, and under which policy exception, if applicable. Until then, I cannot sign or be named on the memo. I CC'd Raj and Linda. I did not CC Derek. That was deliberate. If Derek wanted to push back, he could do it in writing where everyone could see. Within 5 minutes, Derek called me. Not a message. A call. Which told me he didn't want a record. I let it ring twice, then answered. Hey, I said. His voice came in low and tight. Why are you making this a thing? I'm not, I said. I'm refusing to be listed as reviewer without approvals. He exhaled like I was wasting his time. We already talked about this. It's retention. Orchard Ridge is volatile. Ethan is the relationship. That's not what retention spend is for, I said. It is when leadership says it is. There it was. The whole philosophy in one sentence. Rules are real until they become inconvenient. I need written approval, I repeated. He paused. Then he shifted tactics. Soft at first. Mark, you're smart. You know how these things work. You're taking this too literally. Literally is how audits work, I said. Silence. Then his tone hardened. Do you want to be seen as a team player or not? I didn't answer right away because I realized something. This wasn't about a car. This was a stress test. They were seeing whether I would fold. I kept my voice steady. I'm happy to help document legitimate retention spend, but I'm not attaching my name to something I can't defend. He laughed, one short breath, like I'd told a joke. Defend from who? It's internal. From you, I thought, from the day you decide you need a scapegoat. But I didn't say that. I said, from audit, from compliance, from common sense. He went quiet again, and I could hear him recalculating. Then he dropped the line that made my hands go cold. Just so you understand, end of year is coming. promotions, budget. I'd hate for you to get labeled difficult over something this small. There it was, a threat wrapped in concern. I stared at my wall and felt something in me settle. Not panic, resolve. That's your choice, I said. My choice is I don't sign. He hung up without saying goodbye. I sat there, breathing slowly, letting the adrenaline burn off. And then I did the thing I'd never done before. I documented the call. I opened my email and sent Derek a recap, polite and clinical. Per your call at 2:14 p.m., you indicated this spend is considered retention and that leadership approved verbally. As stated, I require written authorization before my name can be used as reviewer. Please advise who approved and where that approval is recorded. I CC'd Megan and Raj. I included Linda. I hit send. My finger hovered over the mouse afterward, because I knew I'd just crossed a line that can't be uncrossed. But that night, something happened that gave me a small, sharp satisfaction. Megan replied, one sentence. Thank you. Removing your name from the draft until approvals are verified. It wasn't victory, but it was the first time all week I felt like I wasn't alone in the room. I leaned back, exhaled, and for the first time since the car reveal, I stopped wondering if I was overreacting. I wasn't. I was early. Because 30 minutes later, Raj pinged me privately. Off the record, AP got told to reclassify another charge under Orchard Ridge last month. Not your area, but it looked similar. Similar. That word landed like a weight. Because if this wasn't a one-off, if Derek had been using client retention buckets like a personal slush fund, then the car wasn't the problem. It was the loudest example, and if I'd just blocked the memo, I hadn't fixed anything. I'd only made myself inconvenient. But that was just the beginning. That night, I didn't sleep like a normal person. I slept like someone who knows a company can erase you with a single click if you don't get ahead of the story. Raj's message sat in my head. Another charge. Similar. If Derek had done it once, it was misconduct. If he'd done it repeatedly, it was a pattern. And patterns don't get solved with a single email. They get solved with proof. The next morning, I didn't storm into anyone's office. I didn't gossip. I didn't confront Ethan in the parking lot next to his new SUV. I did the only thing that makes people like Derek nervous. I asked for data, calmly, in writing. For a reason that sounded routine, I emailed Megan. For operational controls, can you share a detailed GL export for the Orchard Ridge retention bucket for Q4? I want to confirm spend aligns with service recovery actions. Read-only is fine. I expected a fight. Instead, 15 minutes later, she replied with a CSV in one line, "Keep this confidential." When I opened it, my stomach tightened. Not because it was shocking in a movie way, because it was boring in the worst way, the kind of boring that means it's real. Line after line, merchant names, dates, amounts, short descriptions, and as I scrolled, the story stopped being, Ethan got a car. It became, someone has been using a restricted client bucket like a personal rewards fund. There were charges that made sense. Shipping credits to expedited carrier fees, a vendor rush order. Then there were charges that didn't. A luxury hotel in another city, coded as client meeting, on a weekend. A high-end watch boutique, coded as relationship gift. A premium dining group charge big enough to fund a small team's bonuses, coded as retention dinner. And there it was, sitting in the middle like a bruise you can't ignore. Vehicle lease, $150,000, Orchard Ridge retention. I didn't need imagination. I needed verification. So I cross-checked the dates. I pulled up our internal travel calendar, the one operations used for coverage planning. I found the weekend of the client meeting hotel charge. Derek had been out. Ethan, too. Then I checked our badge logs because our building required swipe entry, and I had access to the operations facility data for staffing purposes. Derek hadn't swiped into the office that Friday afternoon. Ethan hadn't either. They hadn't been working late. They'd been gone. I sat back, rubbing my forehead, and felt something snap. Not anger, not fear. The last little piece of my old belief system. Because I'd always assumed the leadership mess was incompetence, not intent. This was intent. This was someone using policy language like camouflage. I opened the spreadsheet again and filtered by approver. That's when it got worse. Several of the questionable charges had approval notes that weren't names. They were initials. And the initials matched Derek's. Which raised one brutal question. If Derek was the person requesting the spend, and also the person approving the spend, what exactly were our controls worth? I didn't want to guess. I wanted something defensible. So I did a simple thing. I asked Raj for one more piece of context. Can you confirm who has approval authority on Orchard Ridge retention, and whether self-approval is blocked? His reply came back fast. Authority is sales VP plus finance controller. Self-approval is supposed to be blocked. But if it's routed as urgent retention and HR processes the vendor, it can bypass standard workflow. Bypass. I stared at that word. Because now the whole meeting made sense. The smile, the panic, the rush to document. They weren't trying to justify something clean. They were trying to paper over a bypass before the year closed. That was the moment I realized I wasn't dealing with one bad decision. I was dealing with a system that had learned how to cheat politely. And I was the guy they wanted to use as the signature that made it look legitimate. I opened a fresh document and started building what auditors call a work paper. Policy excerpt, retention spend rules, GL export, Q4 Orchard Ridge retention, highlighted questionable charges, approval workflow notes from Raj meeting. Invite, plus email chain showing verbal approval. Claim Derek's text. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. My recap email documenting this call, I didn't add opinions. I didn't write fraud. I didn't write theft. I wrote what I could prove. Then I forwarded the work paper, encrypted attachment, to Megan with a message that was almost painfully neutral. I flagged multiple transactions that appear inconsistent with policy and approval authority. I'm escalating for controls review. Please advise the correct channel. Compliance internal audit. She didn't reply right away. For an hour, nothing happened. No fireworks. No screaming. Just the hum of a regular workday that suddenly felt fake. Then my phone buzzed. A Slack message from Linda in HR. Linda, hey Mark, can you hop on a quick call? Derek wants to close this out today. Not finance wants. Not compliance wants. Derek wants. And before I could answer, another notification popped. System alert. Your access to client retention reporting has been updated. Updated is a polite word. I clicked. Tried to open the folder where I'd pulled the retention reports before. Access denied. I felt a cold wave move through my chest. Not panic, but that clear, quiet certainty you get right before things turn. Because now it wasn't just about money. It was about control. They saw me looking, and they were already trying to shut the blinds. I typed a single line back to Linda. Happy to talk. Please include Megan and Raj. No phone call. No side conversations. No darkness. If they wanted to move fast, we'd move fast, in daylight. Then Megan finally replied to my earlier email. 2 sentences. Do not discuss this with Derek. I'm looping internal audit. Keep everything you have. I sat there staring at the screen, feeling my pulse in my throat, because that was the first time someone senior said the quiet part out loud. This wasn't paperwork. This was exposure. And once internal audit steps in, people don't just get embarrassed. They get desperate. I didn't know it yet, but that decision would cost them everything. The next 48 hours felt like watching bypass alarms go off in a system you built. One by one, exactly where you predicted. First, Derek stopped pretending. He didn't email anymore. He started showing up. He walked to my desk mid-morning like he owned the air around me and said, low enough for only me to hear, "Why are you doing this?" I kept my eyes on my monitor. "I'm not doing anything. I flagged policy issues." He leaned closer. I could smell peppermint gum and irritation. "You're not internal audit," he said. "You're not legal. You're ops." I looked at him then. Calm. Blank. I'm the guy you tried to put on the memo, I said. So yeah, I'm involved. His jaw tightened. He straightened up like he'd been stung. Then he smiled. Tight. Artificial. Let's not be dramatic, he said. We're fixing it. Fixing it. That word is what people say when they mean covering it. He walked away, and 10 minutes later, I got a meeting invite titled Performance Alignment. Mark R. No agenda. Just Derek and Linda from HR. I stared at it and felt the heat rise behind my eyes. Not fear, disgust, because the pattern was obvious. If they couldn't pull my name onto their paperwork, they'd try to pull my career into a box. I forwarded the invite to Megan with one line. FYI, this looks retaliatory given the timing. She replied within minutes. Do not attend alone. I'm notifying audit. So I declined the meeting, and I documented why. Due to an active controls review, I will not attend 1-1 performance discussions without finance, Chiasa's compliance present. That was the moment the office shifted around me. Not loudly, subtly. People who normally joked with me kept their interactions brief. My manager's assistants stopped making eye contact. Slack messages got colder, shorter. They didn't need to say Mark is a problem. The environment said it for them. Then the chaos hit. At 4:17 p.m., Raj sent me a screenshot. AP system note. Hold all Orchard Ridge-related payments until further notice. At 4:33, my phone buzzed again. Megan this time. Audit is opening a formal case. They're pulling the entire Q4 retention ledger. Expect interviews. At 4:41, Derek sent me a message that wasn't a threat anymore. It was a plea pretending to be confidence. Derek, this can get messy. Let me handle it. You don't want your name anywhere near this. I stared at the screen and almost laughed. My name was already near it. He put it there. I didn't reply, because the next thing I did was the most important thing I'd done all week. I exported everything I was allowed to export. Policy pages, email chains, meeting invites, my recap email, the draft memo with my name on it, the access change notification, into a single time-stamped folder on our secure drive. Exactly the way audits like to see it. Then I emailed myself a simple log, date, time, what happened. Not as revenge, as insulation. That evening I got an unexpected call from a number I didn't recognize. I answered. Mark? A woman said. Her tone wasn't HR. It wasn't finance. It was crisp, professional, controlled. This is Angela, internal audit. My stomach sank, but I kept my voice even. Okay. We're initiating a review related to Orchard Ridge retention expenditures, she said. I understand you raised concerns. I did, I said. We'd like you to walk us through what you observed, specifically how the vehicle expense was coded, documented, and who requested you to sign a memo. I felt that same cold calm return. Understood, I said. I have a timeline and supporting documents. Good, she said. One more question. Has anyone changed your access since you raised concerns? I didn't hesitate. Yes, my access to retention reporting was revoked the same day I asked for a GL export. There was a pause, like she was writing it down. Thank you, she said. That's important. After the call, I stood in my kitchen for a long time, staring at nothing, because it hit me. This was now bigger than Derek, bigger than Ethan, bigger than my watch. This was a situation that could end people's careers, and people don't lose careers quietly. The next day, the interviews started. Raj went first, then Linda, then Ethan because the car was in his name, even if he didn't sign the invoice. By lunch, the office felt like it had a low-grade fever. Whispers, sudden silences when someone walked by, people taking calls outside. At 2 p.m., Derek tried one last move. He sent a company-wide email praising ethical culture and speaking up responsibly. It read like a man hanging a "No fire here" sign while smoke fills the hallway. Then 20 minutes later, I got a message from Ethan. Ethan and I had never messaged directly before unless we had to. This was the first time he'd reached out on his own. Ethan: "Hey man, can we talk? This is getting blown out of proportion." I stared at his message. I could picture him, confident, annoyed, trying to keep control of a situation that was slipping. I replied with the truth, but not cruelty. "I'm not discussing an active audit. If you have questions, talk to HR or audit." He didn't take that well. 2 minutes later, Ethan: "So you're really going to do this? Over a watch?" Over a watch. That's what they always do. Reduce it to something small, something petty. Make you sound emotional so they can sound rational. I typed slowly. "It was never about the watch. It's about the paperwork you didn't see." And then, because he couldn't help himself, he revealed the part he thought was safe. Ethan: "Derek said it was approved. He said it was part of keeping Orchard Ridge happy. That's literally what he told me." I read it twice, because in one sentence, Ethan did something priceless. He confirmed Derek was the source. Derek gave a business justification. Derek framed it as retention. Ethan accepted it based on Derek's authority. That message wasn't just emotional ammunition. It was a thread, a direct line tying Derek's mouth to the transaction. I didn't respond. I screenshot it and saved it into my audit folder with the timestamp. Then I forwarded it to Angela in internal audit with one line: "FYI, Ethan confirming Derek's stated rationale." That afternoon, Derek vanished from the floor. No meetings, no walkarounds, no team player speeches. Just gone. And around 5:30 p.m., Megan walked past my desk and didn't stop. But she said something as she passed, barely moving her lips. "They're pulling the vendor communications." Vendor communications. My mind flashed to the dealership, the lease company, the invoice notes. If Derek or HR had messaged a vendor with instructions like code to retention or urgent, no questions, it would be the kind of proof that doesn't require interpretation. That's when I realized I wasn't watching a storm. I was watching the ceiling crack. And then silence, the kind that means something's gone wrong. Because my calendar updated. A new meeting appeared, marked mandatory. All hands, executive update. No agenda, no cheerful title. Just an executive update, scheduled for 9 a.m. the next morning. And I knew in my bones why. The next morning, the office didn't feel like an office. It felt like the minutes before a verdict. People showed up early and didn't talk. The loud guys from sales weren't loud. The usual hallway jokes were gone. Even the coffee machine sounded too aggressive. At 8:57, everyone filed into the main conference area, where the all-hands were always held. Standing room, folding chairs, a big screen with the company logo and some generic winter graphic, still left over from the holidays. I sat near the back, not hiding, just watching. At 9 sharp, the CEO walked in with the CFO beside her, and behind them 2 people I'd only seen once before during an acquisition integration, legal counsel and internal audit. No Derek, no Ethan. The CEO didn't start with small talk. She didn't say, "Hope everyone had a great holiday." She said very plainly, "Yesterday we opened a formal review into misuse of restricted client retention funds." The room didn't make a sound. She continued, "This includes expenditures that were not aligned with policy, were not approved through required channels, and created audit exposure." Then the CFO stepped forward and put a single slide on the screen. Not a dramatic slideshow. One slide. A list of categories: unauthorized retention expenditures, approval workflow, bypass, vendor misclassification, retaliation concerns required corrective actions. Seeing retaliation concerns on a slide in front of the entire company did something to the air. It wasn't gossip anymore. It was real. The CFO looked up, scanned the room, and said, "Effective immediately, we have placed Derek H. on administrative leave pending investigation." A few people inhaled sharply. Someone near the front whispered, No way. The CEO didn't pause. We have also placed Ethan L. on leave pending review of the vehicle allocation and related communications. There it was. The car. Not a gift. Not appreciation. A vehicle allocation tied to restricted funds. The CEO kept her tone steady. We will not discuss specific dollar amounts in this forum, but I will say this. Our client retention budgets exist to protect the business, not to provide personal benefit outside policy. She looked directly into the room like she wanted every person to hear the next part cleanly. If you were asked to sign documents, write memos, or approve expenses without a complete approval trail, you did the right thing by refusing. If you experience pressure or retaliation for raising concerns, internal audit and legal will meet with you privately. It was the closest thing to an apology a company ever gives. And it landed, because people weren't thinking about culture in that moment. They were thinking about their own names on things they didn't fully understand. When the all hands ended, nobody rushed out. They stood in clusters, talking quietly, looking around like the building had changed shape. Megan caught my eye from across the room and gave me a small nod. Not warm, not friendly. Professional. The kind that meant you were right to document. I went back to my desk and kept working. That's not bravado, just habit. In chaos, I default to routine. At 10:13, Linda from HR sent me a meeting invite. Different tone this time. Controls review, follow-up, with legal plus audit. I accepted. The call was short. Angela from audit asked a few clarifying questions. Legal counsel asked about Derek's phone call and the promotion threat. I read my notes. I referenced my recap email. I offered the timestamps. No emotion, just sequence. At the end, Angela said, "Thank you, this was handled correctly." Then legal said something I didn't expect. We're also reviewing whether any employee was disadvantaged in compensation due to misuse of funds. Disadvantaged. The word stuck. Because in a sane world, the car wasn't just a policy violation. It was a symbol of how value was being assigned inside the company. And the watch wasn't just cheap, it was a message. That afternoon, a second company-wide email went out. This one from the CFO. It announced immediate changes. All client retention buckets. Locked pending review. No HR processed vendor payments without finance. Sign off. New approval thresholds. No verbal approvals accepted. Whistleblower protections reaffirmed. A third-party audit firm being brought in to validate findings. Then came the line that made the entire week worth it. The vehicle allocation will be reversed. The contract will be terminated. The asset will be recovered. Recovered. That meant the car was coming back, not because people were petty, because it never belonged to him, and the company needed to show, in a way that couldn't be argued, that rules were rules. At 4:30, Megan called me. Her voice was tired but clear. "Mark, you're not in trouble," she said. "Your refusal to sign helped us stop the memo from becoming a liability." "I wasn't trying to burn anyone," I said. "I know," she replied. "But you did stop something worse." She paused, then added, "Also, we're reviewing compensation adjustments. You were under-leveled for your scope. That's not related to this, but it came up." I didn't say thank you right away, because I didn't want to sound like I'd done it for money. But a part of me felt something soften. Not vindictive satisfaction, relief. 2 days later, Derek was officially terminated. They didn't announce it, of course. Companies rarely do. But it traveled through the building the way real news travels. Quietly, quickly, with no need for embellishment. And Ethan? Ethan came in one morning without the SUV. He walked past my desk like I wasn't there. No jokes, no swagger. Just a man suddenly realizing the thing he thought was a trophy was actually a receipt. The funniest part is, nobody cheered when he lost it. There was no celebration, no karma parade. Just the company returning to its baseline, like a fever finally broke. A week after that, I got called into a meeting with the CFO and Megan. It wasn't dramatic, It was direct. They offered me a role in controls and operations oversight, more authority, better pay, clearer scope. Not a reward, a correction, because they'd learned the hard way what happens when the people who protect the process are treated like background noise. When I got home that evening, I put the $25 watch on the kitchen counter. My wife looked at it and said, "You keeping it?" I stared at it for a moment. Then I said, "Yeah." Not because I liked it, because I wanted to remember the feeling of being underestimated, the feeling of being used, and the exact moment I decided I wouldn't be anymore. Because the truth is, I didn't win by yelling. I didn't win by exposing secrets on social media. I won the boring way, by refusing to sign, by writing things down, by keeping the story in daylight until it collapsed under its own weight. And once it was over, the calm that came afterward felt clean, like a room after someone finally turns off the alarm. No more frozen smiles, no more team player threats. Just a quiet satisfaction. They tried to buy loyalty with a car, and all it did was show me exactly what they were willing to steal. Then they lost everything they'd been stealing for,